Welcome, everyone, to the Sports Illustrated Media Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Traina. Thanks so much for listening. Good show this week as we head into the conference title games in the NFL. Andrew Siciliano from the NFL Network and obviously the RedZone, which I know all of you love, is on the pod today. Great interview with Andrew. Before we get to it, let me just remind you, if you missed any previous episodes of the Sports Illustrated Media Podcast, you should check those out. Troy Aikman last week was on the pod. 2 weeks ago, we had Andrew Marchand and Armin Katayan, and year-end episodes with Andrew Perloff and Peter Schrager in the archives as well. So check all those out. Subscribe, rate, and review. All right, let's get to this week's show with Andrew Siciliano. All right, joining me now from the NFL Network, RedZone channel. Everybody loves the RedZone, and that means you like this guy, Andrew Siciliano. Andrew, how's it going?
Jimmy, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you. So you're at, give the people who are watching this on YouTube a little information here. You're at the NFL Network headquarters there in Los Angeles. Is that what the building we see in the background?
Yeah, that's behind where I'm kind of, if anyone's ever been here, which maybe 5 people have, we're between the two buildings. So the studio building over here, the newsroom, and the office building behind me. I am sitting outside. It rained yesterday. The sun is shining. We have clear air. It's beautiful.
I appreciate you doing this at 8 o'clock in the morning, your time. Before we even get into anything, we are taping this Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and the inauguration is about to start. It's going on. And I was watching, I'm thinking, they could do like a sports RedZone type of channel for this event with all these people, coming in one after another, whether it's the Clintons, Obama, Pence, you could be there announcing who's coming and going. Would you want to do something like that, or is that wouldn't be fun for you?
No, I would love it. I've said it for years that I would do something like that. I'm a news guy. I watch as much news as I do sports. So yeah, I would totally be down for that. DirecTV has like the news mix channel, which I will sometimes flip over to. There's, years ago or in elections past when we've had, I think it was in 2016 when we had so many Republicans, at least on the initial ticket, that they had 2 different debate schedules, right? They had the early debate and the late debate. Yeah. I suggested that you have everyone stare into their cameras and talk simultaneously, and then I could moderate. And if somebody make it like the RedZone, we're making a good point, I could flip to that camera or that camera. And actually, I had a friend working on Capitol Hill a bunch of years ago that sent me a picture from their desk of an internal feed that they had with all the news channels in the Capitol, and said, "This is like RedZone. Why don't you come here and do this?" And I said, I would love to do that, but it has never happened.
Yeah. This was your 15th year doing RedZone, if I'm not mistaken, for DirecTV. Was it your 15th? 05.
This was just our 16th.
16th. And I have to say, we've discussed this before, Andrew. I should reiterate, it was so nice to come on the SI Media Podcast once before, after I'd written that I don't like the RedZone channel. So I think that was very classy on your part. But I'll tell you, I feel like it's as popular as ever. Do you get that vibe as well? I mean, people, no matter what, that RedZone on Sunday, that's it for people. It's pretty remarkable how it holds up every year.
We're to a point, and I'm grateful that we've made it this long. First and foremost, it's a testament to everyone at DirecTV who has been there. Believe it or not, there's still a core group of us who have been there since day one, who have kept it afloat and made it as good as it has been. I think we're to the point now after 16 years that you have a generation that grew up with it, which A, makes me feel old, but B, makes you feel like you've accomplished something, and there are younger people in their 20s and their 30s, more so in their 20s, that this is the only way that they have ever known watching football, which just blows me away, because you and I, not to age ourselves, are old enough where to see a score, you had to wait for Brent Musburger to come on CBS at halftime and tell you who was winning a game, or you had to wait for the crawl when that was a new thing on the bottom of your screen, maybe once a quarter or once every 10 minutes to even know what was happening in another game. And we're to the point now where this is the only way they know watching, which I don't know what that does for a future in the television business, but I know it gives us some satisfaction that we've made it this far.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as great as it is that people can get all the highlights in real time as RedZone does, I do feel bad for those people who never got to experience the high that we got to experience when you would hear Pat Summerall say, "Let's go to Brent Musburger at the NFL Today studio with an update." I mean, there was a legitimate high there when you were a kid watching that and heard that.
Right, because you had no idea what the score. I mean, you not only knew you didn't know what the score was. You didn't know how much time was left.
What game they were going to.
You knew you had no idea what game they were going to, or even just waiting until halftime.
Yeah.
To see who was winning, to see who had scored. I mean, there could be a 15-minute window where you were in a total blackout, and then you'd find out that someone scored 3 touchdowns. And then you'd yell to the kitchen, "Dad, come in here. You can't believe what just happened in Buffalo," because you had no clue.
Right. You do the DirecTV version of RedZone. Scott Hansen does the cable version, if you want to call it that. And there's all these rumblings about the NFL and DirecTV possibly parting ways. Does that bother you? Do you pay attention to that, or do you not even really think about it?
You know, it's going to sound like a corny, cliched answer that is far above my pay grade. I'm aware of it. I mean, we have 2 more years. We being DirecTV on that NFL Network, I'll put that hat on now. We being DirecTV have 2 more years, and then we'll play it out. It's not like we're in our to use a player analogy, not like in your last year, your walk year. It's not a lame duck season. There's 2 more years left, and we'll see how it goes. Who knows what the TV landscape is going to look like? I know the league, obviously through your reporting and everyone else's reporting, we might do some of the other TV deals this offseason. Obviously, that's some of the rumblings. I can't imagine that anything gets done until those get done. But truly, who knows? They DirecTV and the league have had contracts renewed in years past. We've gone through this. I can't treat this one much differently. We've made it 16 years. Let's hope to make it to 18, and then we'll go from there.
Over the 16 years, what's been the biggest difference or change for you doing the job from year 1 to year 16?
I think the biggest thing is just how many people have multiple screens, right? Like when we first started, everyone had a cell phone, but the idea of watching football on your phone or even getting real-time scores, you probably get scores back then, but Twitter and all the apps where it just pushes to your phone, that didn't exist. The idea of a man cave back then, or multiple screens in your living room or your basement, was something that some people had, but you were kind of a crazy person if you did that. Right now, not everyone, but a lot of people have that. So the idea that when you gave someone breaking news or something that happened at a game, there was a pretty darn good chance they didn't know it. Now there's a good chance that they saw it on the other screen simultaneously as you were showing them something else. So that, to me, and the other thing too, is just fantasy. Fantasy was in its earlier stages, it was certainly around. I mean, we at at Fox, I was at FSN at the time, and we at that point were in our 2nd or 3rd year of what we call the Ultimate Fantasy Football Show. Eric Kramer, Warren Moon, Patrick O'Neill, yours truly. It was like the first national fantasy show. So fantasy was certainly a thing, but it wasn't like it is now.
Right.
And that has, I think, changed everything. I don't know how it's changed maybe the way we do the show, but it's changed, I think, the attention of the viewer.
And then on top of that, the other thing that has started in the last few years, obviously, was what was the daily fantasy with the DraftKings, the FanDuel.
Sure.
And now gambling is legalized in a lot of states, although I know Roger Goodell doesn't want that mentioned in any way, shape, or form. So the daily fantasy too, that really became a huge thing there for the NFL as well. I'm sure that was a big change too for you.
Yeah, sir. I mean, just from the sponsorship perspective, I mean, there's so many elements on not only the RedZone channel and DirecTV on Sunday, but during the week on NFL Network as well. That a couple of years ago we would have never done. Honestly, it hasn't changed. I know people are going to think I'm just lying through my teeth. It hasn't changed the way I do the show because I don't do any of it.
Right.
I just, it doesn't interest me whatsoever. For those who love it, good. That's great. I always see on Twitter, oh, that touchdown was meaningful. And that's generally the first time I hear of it.
Yeah.
I get people tweeting at me like, yo, you went to that game because that game was of special interest to you. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No, it wasn't. We're going to go to the game if the action dictates going to the game. And a lot of times I find out about this stuff after the fact. When I did sports radio many 20 years ago, whatever, actually far more recent than that, 12 years ago here in LA, when I did sports talk radio, that was something that I paid more attention to. It just never interested me beyond the content on a sports talk radio show. And I kind of keep my head in the sand on it because I think, I don't know, it just helps me do the job a little bit better. I know that's counterintuitive.
Yeah. I mean, it can never happen, but in a dream world, it would be nice if maybe they had like a person on set with you who to cover the game, to let you like this. The spread here is 6. You might want to like keep an eye on this game. But,
don't get me wrong. It's not as if members of our research staff there may have some knowledge that I don't have, but we're not going to a game because of that.
Right.
No way. Like no bleeping way. I'm sorry if that angers people. We're going to a game if the end of the game, if there's something that's going to change the game. We're not going to a game because someone's about to kick a 51-yard field goal down 15 with 1 second left on the clock. It's just, there's going to be something better than that.
Well, there's a lot of people who'd want to see that field goal, though. I can tell you that.
Well, that's not like me trying to discount the interest of the viewer. But if it's between that or a team down 8 with 40 seconds to go in the red zone, needing a score and an onside kick, that's what's important.
Right.
I'm not like trying to be anti.
No, I
that
understand.
Side of the business. Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. It's just I'm not paying attention to it.
Yeah. So 16 years doing the red zone on Sundays. You missed your first show ever this year, week 6, because you had COVID. Just curious what that was like for you. How you feeling now?
That sucked.
How bad was it for you? Because the one thing about COVID, it seems like everyone's experience with it is different.
Sure. Well, the good news is I didn't have it. So that's
I thought everything online says you had it.
False alarm.
Okay.
No, that's absolutely wrong.
Okay.
That did not happen. I had a positive test. Look, here's the lucky thing is I didn't have it, and there are far more people that have had far worse 2020s and 2021 with COVID than me. Mine was an inconvenience that day, and that's all it was. But look, we see this with players. We see this in all aspects of life and all jobs where there are inconsistencies with testing, and that's what happened that morning.
So it was a false positive.
It was a false positive. I got flagged on a test.
Wow.
And it was just, I've never been more frustrated in my life. I wasn't mad at anybody. It's just the world we live in. There's no one to blame. And there was a lot of talking and in the interest of safety, but truly the interest of safety, because, I'm shouting without a mask for 7 hours. And,
right.
While everyone around me, and we've cut down the number of people on stage, it's gone from 10 down to 4. Well, everyone around me is wearing a mask. That's not safe to anyone. I mean, let's say that test was right. There's no way I could actually work. So I went home and I watched on the couch, and it was awful.
If you don't mind, well, I want to get to it, but take me through the timeline of you testing positive, then the decisions made you're not going to work, and then finding out you didn't have COVID and it was a false positive. What time span did that all take place?
Yeah. So, I tested positive that morning on the way in. When I got there.
Right.
And that was stunning. I mean, yes and no. Like COVID plays, the anxiety of getting tested every day plays little head games. I think we've all been there. We've all been there where, hey, you got the sniffles. Crap, do I have COVID? Everyone has experienced something like that, right? So the day before, I was a little run down, but big deal. So I had a bad run Saturday morning, and I was like, end of my run, I'm like, wow, I probably had 3 beers on Friday night. That's why my run sucks. But then it starts going into your head, well, maybe it's because it's something else. And then on Sunday, you test positive, and you're like, crap. So we retested. It was negative. But what I mean, flip a coin. You can't just take the result you like, right? So the decision was made to go home. And Dan Helly came in and did the show. So I mean, I think I tested positive at like 6:45 a.m. and probably, so, you know, we start at 10 a.m. local here. So I was probably in the car driving home by 7:30 after we had talked about it in the parking lot, and I went home. I had to call NFL Network and let them know because I wanted to say something on Twitter. Obviously, I work for two different buildings, two different companies. I wanted to make sure they weren't caught, you know, flat-footed and found out on Twitter. So I had to call them, and we talked that through. And then I went home and I watched the games on the couch for the first time since 2004. And then to answer your other part of the question, I didn't truly know until Monday, because Sunday afternoon, while Aaron Rodgers was getting picked off, it's funny how we come full circle now. That was week 6 when the Packers lost badly in Tampa. So I'm listening in the car, and I drove to get the full all the way up the nose brain tickler PCR test.
Right.
And I got that Sunday afternoon, but I didn't truly know until Monday, 24 hours later. So, I mean, there was 30 hours where I did not know. But like I said before, in the grand scheme of things, compared to what other people went through, it was just a hiccup.
Well, it's
and
interesting
I'm glad
in your case, because
I
I kept expecting you to say that you didn't have symptoms, but you said you felt a little run down Saturday. And like you said, that could be anything at any.
That could be anything.
Right. So, and that's exactly right about the mind game. You know, I had a situation, where my brother had tested positive on a Tuesday. I was with him on Thursday. And then I test negative, but then you're sitting there for 2 days waiting to see if you get it, even though you feel fine. The mind games are, I said to all of my friends that week that I went through that you think you know everything about COVID from paying attention to the news and everything, but what you don't really know the mind game until it comes into your sphere, basically.
Yeah. And I would rather have to go through the anxiety for a day and find out I don't have it.
Right. Of course.
Than actually go through having it. So, it's funny how I think all of our perspective, it's something that I keep reminding myself of. We all have bad days at home, at work, where you want to, punch a wall or kick the dog, figuratively speaking. I don't have a dog. I have punched walls. But this year, the last year, I keep telling myself, hey, take a deep breath.
Right.
Step back for a second, realize that there are far worse situations you could be in right now. I think that was the first couple of months of COVID. That was a lot easier because it truly was horrible out there. Not that it isn't now, but now that we've gotten back into more of a daily routine and things become more annoying, I think, than they were back in March and April, where we were adjusting to this new world. I still have to remind myself, hey, take a breath. I've had to do it the last, a couple times the last few weeks, just for random things. Take a breath. Right. And that was back then one of those moments where, hey, it could be a lot worse.
So tell me what it was like 16 years in a studio on Sundays, and then you're on your couch, basically being one of us. Did you watch the RedZone the whole day, or did you watch like a game on CBS or Fox? How did you?
I didn't watch it all. It's not about anyone else. It was just like I couldn't watch. I mean, I don't have kids, but it's like the scene in a movie where it's like the guy comes back from the dead, or the guy just shows up on the sidewalk and he sees like his family going on without him. Right. You know that scene? I don't know I can't think of a movie, but that scene. That was me. I can't watch. Yeah. So, and that was also, I'm a huge Browns fan. So that was also Browns Steelers week 6, where they went to Pittsburgh and got blown out. And so part of me was like, all right, think of the whole positive attitude thing. Part of me was, hey, I'm going to get to go home. I'm going to make a breakfast. I'm going to pour a cup of coffee. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm going to watch the Browns and the Steelers. And then that game just got awful in about, 10 minutes. And so that day was beyond awful because A, I wasn't there, and B, the Browns are getting blown out, and C, it just was a kick in the gut. That's what I watched.
It was funny because one of the things I had written down to ask you was, listen, I feel like, people say to me like, why, because I write about media a lot, do the media podcast, obviously, why do you think people care about media? Why are people into what you do? My answer is always, listen, if you watch sports, you have an opinion on who's calling the games or how the games are presented. It's just human nature. So I was going to ask you based on just doing RedZone, but now you even have that week at home. Is there anything, if you could find one thing you'd like to see the NFL do differently in terms of TV coverage? Is there anything that stands out to you that you would, maybe, I don't know, different start times, maybe, I don't know, anything with announcing, anything with the way anything from the TV coverage standpoint, as someone who's there every Sunday doing, I get to hear the announcers as much, but obviously you have Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night, but is there anything from the TV standpoint you'd like to see them do differently, positive or negative? Doesn't have to be.
That's a great question. I don't know. I think I'd have to think about that. What would I like to see differently? What I would like to see is staying with 4 preseason games, but that's not going to happen. As someone who works for the Rams in the preseason for the last 10 years doing those games, that's one of my few chances to do games during the season or during the year. So I prefer those. I do think that there is something we learned from this year. I don't know that we need a game on every single day of the week, right? We don't need that. But I do think that there is room for the occasional one-off. And I'm not saying a Tuesday game, but maybe we could throw a Saturday game in a little bit earlier. I know there's always been that respect given to college football, but maybe throw a Saturday game in a little bit earlier because those are fun. The one thing that I don't necessarily want is this, because it's what fans want, is this evening out of the schedule. Like, we need 6 games at 1:00 and 6 games at 4. And it's so fans scream and yell for it, right? I mean, go back to again when we were kids. Imagine if we were upset that there were only 4 games on that we can watch simultaneously at 4 p.m. Eastern. Right. Only 4. Damn it, I demand more games. I don't think fans realize how few teams there are west of the Mississippi and that they all can't play at home every single week. I mean, just look at a map, people. Right. And the other part of that is, once we change the clocks come 4:00, once it starts getting darker earlier, these teams on the East Coast don't want games that are, being played in the dark to 7% of America, midway through the first quarter. Owners like 4:00 Eastern time games if you're on the East Coast, if they get a big TV audience. And plus they're a strain on local services as well, getting police and fire and ambulance, getting everyone there for 12 hours of tailgating. I totally took your question in a different direction.
No. I'm glad you brought that up because it's funny. I'm glad you said that because it is funny that has become a big theme, at least on Twitter, is fans wanting a balance between 1 and 4:00. And I feel like I'm out on an island all by myself because I love it when there's only 3 4:00 games or even 2 games because I like the anarchy of a lot of games at 1:00. And then I like, because usually the best game of the week is going to be at 4:25 on Sunday. It's always the most watched game, more than Sunday night, Monday night. And I like, and this is, we've talked about this the last time. My issue with RedZone is I like to get locked in on the best game. So I'm at 4:25. If you've got the best game, let me lock in on it. And then, like you talked about earlier with the multiple screens, I could put the other crappier games on the other screens or put RedZone on the other screens and let me get locked into the best game of the day. So I don't like when there's a lot of games at 4:00. I know I'm in the minority on that. But I'm glad you brought that up because I do like when it's light at 4:00. Give me 1:00. I like the anarchy of 1:00. I don't need it at 1 and 4.
Well, I think the other part of it is, and I'm going to pat ourselves on the back, whether it's our show or Scott Hansen's show. I think it's a testament to how the viewer has learned and changed his viewing habits because of the RedZone channel. It's that with that anarchy, as you call it, at 1:00 Eastern time, people just come to expect that's the way that they can most enjoy the game. That's their mainlining football. And then when you get to 4:00, the rush is no longer there. So they want that rush all the way throughout.
No, see, I like the calmness.
We've given that rush to them earlier in the day. They just want it throughout the day. And again, we sound like old fuddy-duddies here. I know this is how I feel. Like, imagine as kids thinking, watching 4 games isn't enough. Right. I need more action than just 4 games, or even even 3 games.
Not to mention, you still have a game coming 3 hours later on NBC.
Correct. There's a game now. For me, and Scott and I've never really talked about this, but for me, it's like going 80 on the highway and then getting on the off ramp, and then you have to slam the brakes, and now you're driving 35 again. Or a race car driver. I've never been a race car driver, but pulling off the track and having to drive home to his house. That's what it feels like. I don't sit down for the first. Literally, I don't sit down. I stand up the entire time for the early window. I cannot sit down. There's too much to do and too much energy. And if I sit down, I lose focus. I actually sit down for part of the late window because 3 games feels like you're driving through a school zone with a crossing guard.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. And I like that. I like to get that calmness. Listen, I know you continue to do work for NFL Network, obviously. But what is it like for you personally when the season does end for the regular season? Do you have to come down almost from it, or you're busy with NFL Network and it's fine and you're kept, I mean, this has got to be, your situation almost reminds me of the local baseball TV announcers here, where they do 162 games and the playoff comes and they're out because everything goes to national on television for the playoffs. And, there you are all 17 weeks and the playoffs come and there's no red zone. Is it a little bit of a bummer?
Yes and no. I do enjoy the playoff day on the couch with an adult beverage, putting my feet up and getting up and doing things my way. I absolutely enjoy that. It is a bit of a buzzkill as well to not, get that jolt of adrenaline. This year is a little bit different with both the Browns and the Rams making the playoffs. That had never happened. So those days on the couch are a little bit different, but like you said, my other job at NFL Network goes on, and that doesn't slow down at all. I was in here all day Saturday doing our wraparound shows with Damian Tomlinson for the Rams game there and for the Bills and the Ravens game late. So that was a full day of work. And honestly, Jimmy, my focus immediately turns to the college all-star games, which I do play-by-play on for NFL Network. This year, there's no East-West, but we do have the Senior Bowl. It turns to draft season immediately. I mean, I came home from work yesterday and I did 6 hours of prep on the Senior Bowl. And that's probably going to be the same way after Championship Sunday and all the press conference, or Wednesday and all the press conferences today. We're not going to be in Mobile the entire time. We're going to do the practices from here in LA. And then we're going to fly to Mobile on Friday and do the game from there on Saturday. So it's straight on to that. And my break usually comes after the Super Bowl, maybe a week there.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of reboot immediately for the owners' meetings and the combine, which those aren't happening. So I don't know. It's totally a different world this year.
I'm fascinated to see what the Super Bowl is going to be like this year with obviously with COVID. And, I mean, there is nothing that's more hyped, overhyped, and whatever else you want. I mean, it's 2 weeks of just, a complete media event for 2 weeks with and now it's COVID's going to wreak havoc on that. So I'm curious to see how that turns out. I know a lot of media people aren't even going this year. But what can you do? My biggest thing, and my this is not just a company line. It's how I've been living my life. It's just safety. And as much as they can do, and I know people have been working literally around the clock since day one to try to make it safe for people, then I am all for it. Obviously, things in Florida are a lot different than they are in Los Angeles in terms of protocols and what it isn't open. All I care is that everyone is safe. And look, we have made it this far. I have no doubt they're getting across the finish line, the goal line, whatever corny sports cliche you want. And, Tampa has always been a great host in years past for this game. Fantastic host. I have no doubt they're going to find a way to pull this off. I know you said you were a big Browns fan, so maybe you don't feel this way, but I was going to say most people do what you do what I do, just in the business. Pretty damn good Final Four to have this coming weekend going into the Super Bowl with, Bucks Packers, which is obviously Brady and Rodgers, and then you have the Bills, which is a great story with Josh Allen and the big bad Chiefs. Pretty good Final Four here for the NFL.
Yeah, it's. I don't want to call it perfect because in my eyes, the Browns would be
right.
That said, you have the defending Super Bowl champion with potentially, hopefully, fingers crossed, Patrick Mahomes. I think it's fair to say that you have the two best teams in the AFC the entire year. So, I mean, that's all you want. And in the other corner, you have two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, right? You got a 13-win team for the second straight year, and you got Tom Brady. And just imagine all the time we have spent and all the words that have been written over the past since March 18th, right? About Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. And, through all of that, of course they got here. And of course it's against Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, you cannot complain at all. And if it had been the Browns over the Chiefs, then that would have been a pretty amazing story as
Browns Bills would have been a really fun
their first Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Browns Bills would have been
a super fun.
You could have had your Western New York against Northeast Ohio. That would have been fantastic. Browns Ravens, obviously, there are storylines there as well. Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers would have been fantastic. Is it Drew Brees' final game again a week later against Aaron Rodgers? None of those matchups would have been bad. I think once we got to divisional weekend, I always say it's the best weekend of the year. Maybe the games weren't the best, but the best 8 teams certainly. There wasn't any bad math in the divisional weekend equation.
Right. Absolutely. And, I think, listen, it gets written about a lot, but I'll tell you, if Brady finds a way to win it again, I don't know how it's going to get covered because it's like, what else is there to say at that point? But he wins this one at this age. You have the whole storyline with Belichick. It also means Rodgers gets stuck with only one Super Bowl, ends the Chiefs regime. I mean, there is so much here if Tom Brady finds a way to win another one. It really is amazing. It really is amazing what he's done.
Yeah, it's like I said, it feels like it's all we've talked about since March 18th, but this kind of backs up that it's all we've talked about. Why we keep talking about it? Because he's here, and if he finds a way to get 7, if he can go into, it's not like he can't play in the cold. If he actually goes into Lambeau and does this, all of those narratives are there, and then it's honestly, I think the biggest narrative, and we had it with Drew Brees. I was going through a list this morning of the 32 teams, how many with certainty, like absolute certainty, can you say who their quarterback is going to be next year? Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson. There might be 10 to 12, right? That's it. That's it. And you thought last year's quarterback offseason was crazy. Last week's games and this week's games take us into another, just like mind-numbing the possibilities, quarterback off-season. Whether it's Matthew Stafford or Jimmy Garoppolo or Matt Ryan or those veterans that can't, who knows what's going to happen.
And the most fascinating story of the offseason is going to be Deshaun Watson.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which 3 months ago we never could have foreseen. Right. But go ahead. If everyone listening, count how many teams you can say with certainty there is no chance they have a different quarterback next year.
Yeah.
Maybe 10.
Who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl?
I'm going to go with Green Bay, and listen. If it's Mahomes, I'm not betting against the Chiefs. If it isn't, then I'm definitely taking the Bills. I think Buffalo makes it close regardless. I think Buffalo has this gleam about them. There's a gleam. They're a team on a mission. I don't know if anyone can beat them right now, but I do think I'm just never going against Mahomes at home. And I know everyone wants to say, oh, well, they've been playing all these close games. So, I mean, that's a sign that they're good, that they keep winning all those close games. With Mahomes in the lineup, and I'm counting last week, they've won 24 or 25 games. I don't know how you can reasonably say that a team that has won 24 out of 25 games with their quarterback is going to lose. The Bills are the team to beat them. But if Mahomes is there, I'm going to go with the Mahomes magic, and I'm going to go Rodgers Mahomes.
Two things before we go. Did you happen? It was tough because they put them on Sunday night. I don't understand why HBO aired it on Sunday nights during NFL playoffs. Did you catch any of the Tiger documentary by any chance? The 2-parter on HBO?
I haven't yet.
I was going to ask. Just
I've been so stuck with the news and the football that I've
right. What I was going to ask is, they did it, and it was similar to The Last Dance, which I'm sure you watched because everybody watched The Last Dance. And I was going to ask you, as a, an NFL expert, what NFL figure do you think would be good to get sort of that documentary, deep inside treatment that Jordan got for The Last Dance and Tiger got from HBO? If you were picking, you said, this is who I'd like an NFL documentary on, like in that vein, who would you pick?
I mean, Brady's the obvious one. The question is who's going to produce it. If HBO is doing it, then yeah, absolutely. Not suggesting that others whitewash it, but it needs a serious treatment. I would go Brady. I think Aaron Rodgers is a fascinating human being. I don't know that there is, salacious stuff or I don't know if it has that pull and that mystery that Tiger has. Certainly, you know what I'm saying? That's a great
Aaron would be interesting because he just has that family drama that we don't know anything about. I don't know how many people care about it.
I hadn't even thought of that. I hadn't even thought of that. I don't know if anyone. It's a question of whether or not people care.
Yeah.
What else? I think the entire Patriots last 20 years. So it's not just Brady, but it's everything that has gone on, for good, for bad, the truth, everything in that building. And I'm not suggesting that there are, dead bodies buried in the backyard, but just I think people would love to know the actual story.
I was going to say they need about 20 episodes for that. Last one. Do you still hate pro wrestling?
Wow. Make it like The Last Dance. Make it appointment television.
Yeah. Do you still hate pro wrestling is my last question.
I mean, hate.
I know you're going to say you don't hate it. You just don't watch it.
I just don't care. The idea that it's on sports channels, it's like maybe this last administration is a bad example, but the news channels didn't cover The West Wing as if it was news. The news channels didn't cover Veep as if it was real. Right? That's what I don't care. Everyone enjoy their wrestling shows. If that is your nighttime drama, if you want to see people dress up and pretend like they're wrestling, go for it. Sports channels don't need to cover it because it's not sports.
I bet if I go, I bet I can find instances of WWE superstars somewhere on the NFL Network being in. They have the Miz on like their fantasy show.
That's fine. He's an actor. And we have actors in all the time.
I love it.
No, like I'm being dead serious. There's zero difference. He's a Browns fan, like respect, but there's zero difference. It is a theatrical production.
I have to say, I always found it amusing when poor Joe Buck would have to read those SmackDown promos during Thursday Night Football.
Same thing. Same thing. Look, and by the way, Jake Olben, who brought that whole thing together, who's executive at Fox. I've known Jake for 20 years. Love the guy. We're good friends.
Yep.
Yeah, like he's a huge wrestling fan. Obviously, that's a huge reason that they have it there. I know it ggets a rating. Good for them. But it's not.
Ask
like the idea that Sports Center used to cover it. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah, they say I only bring it up because I like that you stand by your take and you don't back down. That's why I bring it up. I like
it's not a take. It's not a take.
Well,
it's a theatrical production.
No.
It's not a sport.
No, but to say that like Sports Center or Sports Illustrated, et cetera, shouldn't cover wrestling is definitely a take.
No, they shouldn't.
Yeah,
what?
But I like that you have that take.
Whatever your favorite news channel is, whatever. But I just don't think it's a take. It's semantics. I realize CNN, Fox, MSNBC, Bloomberg, OAN, whatever, Russia TV, whatever news channel you watch.
Right.
All right. And sarcasm aside about the last administration here, you don't cover what are obviously theatrical presentations as news. So why would a sports channel cover a theatrical presentation as news?
I'm sure all of those stations you just listed covered a guy who sells pillows telling the president to inject martial law into society today. So it's the same exact thing.
No, it isn't. That guy was actually as I said, this isn't a political conversation.
Right.
Like the last administration was the last administration, the current administration now, as we speak, now being sworn in, like they're actually people in power. It's while you could argue they treated the entire thing like theater, that's not the point.
Right.
Wrestling is a theatrical presentation with a script, not meant to be competition. So it's not in any way something that should be covered as such. I
love that you back up that opinion so strongly. And that's all that matters. And a week. Listen,
there's just no gray area.
Listen, you have the AFC and NFC conference title games this weekend. 2 weeks from then is the Super Bowl. That week in between, there's no football. You have the WWE Royal Rumble. There you go. That's it. It's there for you as a sports fan.
And listen, if we have the Senior Bowl January 30th on NFL Network Live from Mobile, Alabama.
And Royal Rumble's the 31st. Perfect weekend.
And if I wanted to spend an hour of my time, to get away from the world, to watch a scripted program, I would watch Tehran, for example, on Apple TV, or I would watch something on Netflix because, it's just a better script and better acting. And no one's going to try to claim to me that it's real.
All right. I love it. All right. I thank you for coming on, especially I know you got busy day with work and I'm making you miss the inauguration. If you're a news guy, that's a bummer.
All good.
Thanks a lot for doing this early outside. I appreciate it. And
you got it, Jimmy.
I'm sure everyone can't wait to see you next September with the Red Zone.
All right, my friend. Happy New Year. Be safe.
You too. Care. Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. My thanks to Andrew Siciliano for coming on the Sports Illustrated Media podcast this week. If you missed last week's show with Troy Aikman, go into the archives and check that out. Also, recent episodes, we had Andrew Marchand and Armin Katayan on. Armin talked about the big Tiger Woods doc that I mentioned to Andrew Siciliano there. And we had a 2-part year-end roundtable with Peter Schrager and Andrew Perloff. If you haven't listened to that yet, check that out in the archives. And most importantly, please subscribe to the SI Media podcast. If you can rate and review, that helps as well. All right. That wraps it up again. My thanks to Andrew Siciliano, and we will see you next week right here on the SI Media podcast. Take care.